Hey, I just figured since I am putting up videos regarding openings of other people's stuff, I should probably put up an example of what I look for when I write or critique openings in general. So, wrote this up. It's very short, like less than 1,500 words ish. Just a cyberpunky opening by myself, the Papa. So we will do as we have with other videos. We're going to do a short read through, and then I will not so much give critique as justification for the elements that I included. So, my career as a field agent died when I woke up with tentacles on my chin. I stared at them in the bathroom mirror, tooth powder spilling from the pile on my brush into the basin I should have cleaned days ago, and I thought to myself that it might be worth shaving them off. Stupid. They'd be back in a week. I shoved the brush into my mouth and spent the next 3 minutes scrubbing at my remaining teeth. After spitting off-white foam into the basin and setting down my brush, I spent a minute rubbing a hand across my tentacle nubs. They felt like pimples or moles, and were each only about 2 millimeters wide. I knew that within a week they'd be darker, thicker, and would droop like orange noodles from my chin. And if I cut them from my face, they'd grow right back. Not to mention it'd hurt like hell. And I'd have a couple dozen open wounds on my face. Give me a break. I'm not a morning person. I've been a gasser for 6 years, 5 of which I have spent on Gezi Corp day crew. Most gassers have careers twice as long as that before they get so conspicuous it's impossible to use them in broad daylight. I peaked early, getting skilled in everything necessary a year quicker than average, 50% faster. Apparently, I've also come down from my peak at the same rate. It sucks, man. I like being a field gasser. Who wouldn't? It's great being outdoors, seeing the swanky parts of the city up close. And in bright daylight, I get to stand in buildings made of marble and chrome and real, actual wood, and get to eat cheese and meat cooked from real animals that have been alive. And have you ever had real meat? I can't describe it. Tona's told me lab meat's exactly the same as butchered, but I swear it's different. Tastes wild. You can tell it used to quiver and sweat and swell and clench, and that's something no lab steak ever did. Life is something you can taste, man. And since I've got these things growing from my face, there's no way I can pass for human any longer. For a bit, they'll have me on dark crew, but even those are such a step down it's not even comparison. Day crew guys are the real field workers. They're the ones who dress up, usually just builders or orange-suited guys who will melt into the background of whatever, but sometimes we get to wear black and white suits and go into some swanky building and pretend we're clerks of this or that supercorp. And we get to do fun stuff before the real work begins. Dark crew does none of that. Orange suit work is the highlight of their shift, and their ordinary dull stuff is pretending to be a homeless guy or just being yourself as some mutant with a ripped coat and lungs scarred by smog. Dark crew might as well be another species, a bunch of monsters living on another world. I guess being on dark crew is still better than reserve work, though. That's just run-of-the-mill training, and you only get it whenever they deign to call you in. Reserve people don't work regular shifts, and they definitely don't get paid for all those days they miss. Field guys do it for a living. Reserve guys do it so they can squat on the waiting list, so maybe someday they get the blessing and privilege of doing it for a living. As I suit up in the gray and blue slick suit that thankfully still fits, when my tentacles get long enough I'll need to move from zip hood to rebreather, I thank the gods of nickel and gold that I stand no risk of getting kicked to the reserve lists myself. I'm way too valuable for that. 2 hours later, I sit in a little cubby on the balcony of the Gezi Corp's 60th floor, staring at the slip in my stubby hands. A goddamn memo. That's the thanks I get for 6 years of service. Not even a vid meeting, a memo. Segment Manager Nostro Peterson to Gorman Lafayette. Your services are no longer required. You will receive compensation for the current work cycle, but no tasks have been added to your register. At 1200 13th September, your passcode privileges will be revoked. If you are found on premises after this time, you will be escorted off premises. Please note any items belonging to unauthorized personnel are subject to seizure or destruction by Gezi Corporation as per terms of service. Thank you for your service. We are sorry to see you leave. So as I usually do with everybody else, I'll start off with the opening. So opening, this is first person, as usual in first person. The narrator is the protagonist. We start off with a character, Mai. It is a fixed point in time. My career as a field agent died when I woke up with tentacles on my chin. So we have who and when. We have a concrete change of life. My career died. something weird, the tentacles. And then we get a fixed location. He's in the bathroom. There's the bathroom mirror, and he's got the basin. And this is generally the sort of thing I enjoy reading in the books that I read. I'm not claiming this is the perfect way to open a story, because it's not. And I'm going to be doing more examples later of great books that had poor openings. But when I pick up a book in the store, when there's just thousands of books around, and I'm definitely not alone in this, I look at the opening line and paragraph in the first couple pages. And so, as that is what I enjoy reading, I fixate on that when I write. So we have a description of who the character was before his change. We have a description of the weirdness. We've got the orange noodles. It is a concrete description of the weirdness. So this is who he was beforehand. I've been a gasser for 6 years, 5 of which I've spent on Gezi Corp Day Crew. We see that he can pass for a human before the change. We see that between this and right here when he says pass for human. So having tentacles on your chin is not ordinary in this setting, or at least in the circles that the character walks in, at least in broad daylight. We get a span of time. He is faster than usual. We're getting a sense of who he is. We get a sense of setting between the meat and the building materials. We have lab-grown meat, and it's mostly taken over real meat. Wood is scarce. Marble and chrome are fancy, so the city probably isn't gleaming and shiny in general. The main character isn't actually human, and he's doing some kind of espionage-ish work. He's got to dress up, pretend to be somebody else. I don't tell who the gassers are, which might be a problem. I do this trying to raise a core question and keep the reader watching for that, while answering other questions to prevent impatience, but this could very easily be a flaw for a lot of readers, not explaining what he does immediately. We give an alternative, what he has to look forward to, potentially. Dark Crew, it does none of that. We're getting a bit more of the world building with the smog, the mutants. And slight bit more world building down here. We've got the gods of nickel and gold. And we have the rebreather. Again, pointing toward this is an environment that is not necessarily healthy to be standing around in. And of course, the very cheesy, ha ha ha, well, at least this thing isn't going to happen, and then it happens. That's not something I'm terribly proud of. And we get the character's name, Gorman Lafayette. And we see that things have just gotten worse. We're maybe thinking, oh, he's gonna get put on those reserve crews, that sucks, and it's even worse than we thought. His services are no longer required. And that is the opening that I have written to give an idea of the sorts of things I consider when I am reading or writing an opening. I have no further plans for this story at the moment, but I'll ask, what do you think a gasser does? I just completely do not explain that. It would ostensibly be like the core of the premise if this were to be a marketed story. Gorman is a gasser, a person who is such and such, and he must use his gassy skills to do such and such when everything goes wrong. So what do you think being a gasser is? Why does he have tentacles on his chin? Where do you think the story would go from here based on this opening? I would love if you could leave a comment below answering some of this stuff, and would love if you could hit that thumbs up and subscribe button. Ideally, this gives clarity as to the methods I use to go over stories when I critique them. Thank you very much. See you next time.